Okay, hope you enjoyed the movie. The reason this was created was to show you how all the techniques that are going to be taught here can come together to make something entertaining. So throughout this guide, we're going to be referring back to this movie constantly to illustrate different techniques. Now we're not going to cover this 100% because a lot of the scenes are redundant as far as what you can learn from them with the engine. On the other hand, we'll be straying from the movie a little bit in areas because we'll have more to teach you than what is present in the movie. So at the end of this guide, you won't be able to recreate the entire movie, but you will have learned the exact same techniques to create your own. Also, I don't know what the box to this is going to say, but this guide is designed for use with the game Half-Life 2, especially Half-Life 2 Episode 1. It has some updates that make it useful for Machinima. Also, you can try using the Source SDK base, which is a free download with Half-Life 2, but last time I checked, the entity used to create fire in the game would crash it, so maybe that's not the best idea. Unfortunately, each version of the Source engine has its own quirks and glitches that you have to work around the best you can. Now you may have some luck using the game Half-Life 2 Episode 2, but not only was that game not out when production was started on this guide, but I've personally seen some bugs related to that version of the engine as far as camera work goes. While that's beyond the scope of this particular guide, we just want you to know why we'll be using Half-Life 2 Episode 1 for this tutorial. After you have a Source engine game, you're going to have to install some software before we get started. If you want to have lip syncing capability, you're going to need the Microsoft Speech Software Development Kit. It's easy to get. Open up your web browser and use a search engine like I have here. Then type in Microsoft Speech SDK and press enter. And it's the first entry here. You can see I already clicked on it earlier. Now scroll down a bit. It will give you a description of what it does. And the file you want is Speech SDK 5.1, so download that. Then wait on my internet connection. There we go. And tell it to open, and when it finishes, the rest of this should be pretty simple if you've ever installed anything in Windows. You know how it goes. Next, next, I agree, stop bothering me with these prompts, next, finish. Okay, now the other piece of software we're going to need is to install the Source Software Development Kit itself. To get this, go and open up Steam. I'm in offline mode so people won't bother me, and so Steam won't try and pull a fast one and update the SDK on me while I'm trying to teach it. If you don't have this, you'll need to be online though. Okay, so go over to Tools, and the program you're going to want is Source SDK. If you haven't installed it, this will be grayed out. All you have to do then is right-click on it and install. If you don't even have the option to download it, that means Valve wants you to buy one of their games in order to join the club. If that's the case, I recommend getting Half-Life 2 Episode 1. It has some good updates in it, relatively few bugs, and costs $10, I believe. Alright, assuming you have the SDK installed, just double-click on it or right-click and launch the game. It's going to take a second or two to load. And if you see this, you're set. Now for the engine version down below, make sure it's set to Episode 1 and not the orange box. We're not officially supporting that in this guide because of the bugs present in it. The good news is if the bugs ever get fixed, then almost all of what you learned here will carry over to that version of the engine. And finally, the last thing you need to do before you can use this guide is to copy some files over in order to follow along. I recommend opening 2 copies of Windows Explorer like I have here. Now I have to record this before everything's finalized, but I'm told that the first directory we'll be copying from is going to be Machinima Choreography with the Source engine, like you see here. And the place we're going to be copying files to is your game directory under Steam. By default, that's going to be the C drive, Program Files, Steam, Steam Apps, your Steam username, and if you want the best results with this guide, install it to the Half-Life 2 Episode 1 directory, then Episodic. If you only have Half-Life 2, you'll still be able to follow along with almost all of this guide, but some of the custom model content may crash on you when you run it in the game. The techniques will all be the same otherwise. If you're copying to your Half-Life 2 directory, then this will be Half-Life 2 with the subdirectory HL2. Okay, now go to the first window here and you'll see we have 2 subdirectories, Files Created and Files Needed. Files Created are copies of the files that were created in the process of making this tutorial. They're just there if you want to take a look at them for yourself. Files Needed, however, isn't a bluff. We really need those files, so double-click on that directory. Now highlight everything in there and just copy it over to your game directory. And you may have some of the same folder names like I do here. That's alright. This shouldn't overwrite anything important. You'd have to have something like your own custom sound scripts in here before it would. If you do though, you may want to back up anything you've created that you think could overlap. And that's it. Now you're set to run the guide. Now the way this guide is going to work is that we're going to cover one concept with the engine at a time. So if you want to make your characters walk, we have a section just for that. I highly recommend going in order, because a lot of the lessons build off of one another. The format of this will just be me explaining what's happening, following along with the video footage showing you what to do. So if you can't stand the tone of my voice, then you may be out of luck. I can do different accents, but not for hours at a time. The tone of this video is going to be very informal. I frequently make my own personal comments about what's happening in the video, and occasionally some jokes to liven it up a little bit. I won't lie to you, this stuff can get pretty dry, so you were warned. Also keep in mind this was made over a period of time, so the tone of my voice may change a little bit from lesson to lesson. It doesn't mean that I've been replaced by clones because the original Ross Scott tried to escape and had to be killed. It just means my voice isn't the most stable element on Earth. Okay, I think that covers everything. Let's get started.